Welcome to First and Goal, where everything is made up and the points don't matter. Get ready for the latest and hottest topics in the SML. Let's get started. Here's your host, Mad Bomber.
What's going on, SML? First and Goal back again. I think we're on like 3 or 4 straight weeks. So far, going strong. This week we've got Matt, we've got ZBD, and we got Steve. What's going on, guys?
Playoff time. I'm excited.
All right, so you guys have seen it before. You know how it works. I'm gonna have 4 downs, ask you questions, you get points, and we'll start with Steve for this one. Steve, first topic, first down. What current playoff team is Fool's Gold?
This is a tough one for me because I mean, obviously, it's competition across the board is tough. If you make the playoffs, it's an accomplishment. I'm gonna go with MMX only because he's the newest guy I think in the playoffs that I've seen, and I haven't seen playoff success from him. So I'm gonna go with that just because I want to see it before I believe. But it's a tough call because I think any team that made it is capable of winning a game or two at least.
All right, not a bad answer, Straw. What do you think, Matt? Who's Fool's Gold for you?
Yeah, I think there's 2 people that stand out. I think the most obvious one is Tom, or Trick, as you guys know him, the Jets. Look, he plays in the weakest division in the SML in the AFC East. I don't think he has very many wins over playoff teams. I think his only one is over MMX, actually, who we're going to talk more about in a second. The win against Meats was a forced win when Little Meats was born. All of his other wins are against the weak AFC East or a non-playoff team. And then I'm going to echo the previous sentiment. I think it's MMX. I think, his team is really going to probably let him down at some point. But I'm going to go with a little bit of an oddball here just to be a little bit different. And I'm going to say it's Soda. You want to talk about a guy that doesn't have very many quality wins. The only playoff team he's beaten is Stavo and Straw. Now, those are 2 good wins, but previous to that, I'm looking at the list here. None of these teams are making the playoffs. He lost to MMX. So I think it's Soda and Trick.
Yeah, I think that's a good one, especially after what we saw Dan did to him. ZBD, what do you think? Fool's Gold, who is it?
I said this on Johnny and Smokey's podcast. I'm in appearance there. But I tend to think it's funny because we all 3 share MMX is probably the weakest link in the playoffs. But the reasoning I have for it is that having played him once, I play him again later on tonight after recording. I feel as though while his defense is fairly sound, I feel as though, 1, like Matt said, his roster's going to let him down. But 2, if you look at his at how he plays offensively, he doesn't do enough different things to keep the type of users he'll be playing in the playoffs off balance. And when you get to playoffs, you have to have enough things in your repertoire to keep the people you're up against, especially the ones deeper into the playoffs, off balance. So I think he's likely to end up going one and done. I just don't think he's good enough on the offensive side of the ball to make it very far. If he is, he can prove me wrong, but that's just my take.
All right, Matt, second down, we'll start with you on this one. Who has the best user in the league? I've heard Gutta has the best. I've heard a couple others. Who do you think has the best user in the league once and for all?
Yeah, it's a good question. When I saw the question, I wanted to go with Prime, but I think Prime just kind of, his user is more predicated on knowing what you're going to do as opposed to the actual execution of the user. Man, I hate that you gave the answer away, but I think I'm going to go with Gutta. I don't know what it is about Gutta, but even when I play him and I'm cognizant of that user and I'm paying attention to where it is, I still end up somehow throwing at him. I'm going to throw a little bit of a wrench in the mix and say Damon, only because Damon is probably the most frequent switch stick user that I've played. Last cycle we thought the switch stick was going to kind of revolutionize defense and the user and the skill gap, and myself included, I don't really use it that much. It tends to fail on me more than anything else, so I don't see others using it. but I see Damon use it a lot, especially right after the snap. So I'm going to go with those. Geez, all three guys are in the AFC or in the NFC North. Sorry, Johnny, but those are my picks.
All right. ZBD, best user in the SML. Who you got?
It's interesting because I think you're right about Prime. I feel like a lot of his usability comes from him just knowing how people play. But if you recognize what coverage he's in before the snap, you can kind of attack it a little bit. That doesn't mean you're going to be successful, but if he gets a lock onto what you're doing based on the formation, he typically can put himself into a really good position. I honestly have to go with probably Gouda as one of the top users in the league. I know last cycle he actually fooled me a few times. You can make an argument for a player like Astavo when he's on his game, and I do emphasize that it has to be when he's on his game. When he's not on his game, he can sometimes over pursue and end up out of position. I think I'd also make an argument for Dan just based off of the amount of homework he does, and similar to Prime, he does so much homework that he kind of has an idea of where you're going before you even decide it, and so it kind of makes it almost like he kind of sees it, puts him in a better position than one would think. I personally agree with you though. I'm not very good on the switch stick, so I mean those who can do that really well, I think find themselves in a really good spot.
All right, Steve, who do you think?
To go along with what both of them said, I agree with Prime, and I actually kind of put Bomber in that group too. I feel like you guys, at least when I've played you, I feel like you guys know what I'm going to do before I do it sometimes, and I end up falling right into the trap. But from a reaction standpoint, I gotta agree. Every time I've played Gouda, he's always got my number on defense. He stops my run. He knows where he's able to react to my passes quick. I feel like it's not the same thing with Prime and Bomber kind of knowing tendencies. It's more just his reaction time is very quick. I will give an honorable mention though to NYT. The other night when I played him, he's changed his play style a little bit, and I've noticed his tackling, at least on my run game. He shut my run game down completely, and I've been able to run pretty well, especially post patch. But that game, he shut my run game down. So I will give an honorable mention, but Gutta is definitely the one that I fear the most on defense.
Okay. See, I think there are, like you guys said, there's two different kinds. There's prepared guys and guys that just react better. Because I would put Matt on there. I mean, you look at the user interceptions, look away from the corners and see who's got like the linebackers with 10 picks, 9 picks. Stavo is always up there with his user. Gutta, I think he's good in the pass game, but he's awful in the run game. I know you said he shut down your run, but I think I ran for over 10 yards of carry, and that's pretty consistent against him.
When he's on, he can be difficult. I'll say that. But
for me, it's Stavo.
Yeah, maybe NYT can get a good user with that first overall pick.
Yeah, he'll have a good shot at one, but not as long as there's a 99 speed guy out there. He's going that way. All right, ZVD, we'll start with you for third down. I almost want to start with Matt. Actually, we're going to start with Matt because I don't want anybody to take your answer, Matt, because you've been pretty vocal about this. So third down, if you could fix one thing with this game, what would it be?
Yeah, I've been pretty vocal about this in not just this cycle, but in any Madden cycle that I've ever been asked this question. Fix the pass rush. One thing I'll hand Madden is the NFL is one in the trenches. It's a cliche thing to say, but it's absolutely true. The offensive line and the defensive line are the most important parts of a team. Offensive line's never going to matter in Madden, maybe in the PS20 when none of us are able to play the game anymore. But when the pass rush in Madden is good and the QBs have 3-4 seconds to throw a pass as opposed to 8-9 or really however long you can hold off on hitting the button, the game is much better because suddenly you have to make reads quicker. Defense is a little bit easier. It doesn't matter if man coverage isn't that good. And honestly, I think a lot of the times that we don't think man coverage is good, it's because man coverage can't cover for very long. It's the same thing in the NFL. If you want to run man, you're usually going to be blitzing, all out blitzing with it, or you've got the pass rush and the corners to be able to do it. You can't cover in man forever. These receivers are going to get open. And in Madden, if you don't have a pass rush, you almost have to take man out of your repertoire unless you are zero blitzing. And I think that's why in recent years we've seen the increase in if that guy's under center, I'm zero blitzing him because now he's closer to the line, and it's the only way I can play defense because I'll get that immediate heat. Uh, if zones are bad, who really cares? Because they've only got 3 seconds to figure something out. The zones aren't that bad. So fix the pass rush, and in every single Madden, you're going to have a good game, in my opinion. The only other thing I can think of is that's as important as that is making QBs matter, because then you can't just have guys grabbing 60, 70 overall quarterbacks, not having to pay them. So now they've got all this money for other parts of their team. I'm a big proponent of the vision cone. I'd love to see that come back because I thought it separated the quarterbacks a lot. Some of you are probably too young to remember the vision cone, but those are my two things, with the pass rush being the most important.
All right. Steve, we'll go with you next.
So this might be partially a little recency bias, but I have felt this way playing Madden my whole life. I feel like a lot of times, this might sound like an excuse, but I feel like predetermined outcomes or things happening in the game that are out of the control of the users on either side. Like the other night with my NYT game, called a run play, checked it was a run play, called hike, and it turned into a play action. I throw a pick and lose. So like something like that was nothing I did that, was out of my hands. And then I had a similar experience with Spooky the other night. I got it. It was the other way around. I got a free timeout in a primer game when I was out of timeouts because I got an injured player, and it was something that there was no runoff, nothing. I hate things like that where it feels like, especially when it's a good game and it's like kind of decided on something fluky that just doesn't feel right for either person. It takes the fun out of it a little bit.
Okay. ZBD, what do you think? One thing you could change.
It's funny. Matt kind of stole my initial answer with the pass rush. Honestly, he and I are kind of the same mindset with that. I feel like I think he's correct in that the line play in the NFL really determines a lot of games. We saw it in this past Super Bowl where the Eagles' defensive line just absolutely destroyed Kansas City's O-line pretty much all day, and it made Mahomes' life a living hell. We saw it in this cycle before the patch. If you have a good pass rush, you have the ability to potentially neutralize some of these better offenses, and it really forced you to have to make reads quickly. Making reads quickly like that and having to do so in 2-3 seconds is a reality, and I feel like by having neutralized it a little bit, now you're allowing people to stand back there for 6, 7, 8 seconds. It doesn't, like Matt said, it doesn't matter how good of in coverage corners you have. Somebody's going to get open at that point.
All right.
So really, you have to give the pass rush some sort of teeth to it. Otherwise, it just debalances, and you see games like what we saw between you and I, Bomber, where we had like 51-45 or something like that, and you have these old school Big 12 style shootouts where it's like 1st to 50 wins or something like that. And I don't necessarily think that's necessarily the most, for some people it's entertaining, sure, but if you look at it from a player's perspective, that type of stuff can get stressful in a hurry.
All right.
Because you don't really have any room for error.
4th down. Consider most people run similar plays. We'll start with you, ZBD. What do you think is the biggest difference between the top guys and the bottom guys? I mean, playbooks are basically the same. What's the difference?
This is one I thought about a lot today, actually, because I looked at the question and I found it really interesting. I think that you're right that there are similarities for the most part across the league, but I think there are a couple things that make differences. I think one of them is the play selection in terms of the order that people call plays, in terms of what they use to set up things later on in the game. I think a second thing is people's speed in terms of which they process what they see both pre and post snap, how quickly they go through their reads. And I think the third thing a lot of times comes down to how solid are you as a user defensively to give yourself that opportunity to have a chance to make a stop, especially when we're in this meta right now where pass rush might as well be non-existent. So I think all three of those things make a big difference. I think you see people like Prime who prime yourself when you're on your game bomber, like Dan, Gouda, Savo, all the better players in this league, all of them have some combination of at least two of those three abilities there at a very high level. And I think the higher level, the more of those that you have, the better your chances are.
All right, Steve, what do you think? What is your take on that?
So I'm going to say, I mean, in simple terms, it comes down to execution and not turning the ball over. I feel like especially post-patch, but even in past Maddens, you turn the ball over more than the other person, there's a good chance you're not winning that game. So it's calling the plays. Anybody can call the same play, executing it, knowing when the guy's open, or knowing your opponent's tendencies on, even their user, where they like to line up. If you're able to execute the play, and not turn the ball over, you're gonna score more points. And the other thing I would say is just being, like, kind of touch on what ZBD said, being prepared and knowing when to call the plays, like certain, down and distance. It definitely makes a difference. So, calling a pass play when your opponent thinks you're in a run situation, or throwing from under center more often because you run from under center, stuff like that, I think can really help. But ultimately, I really think it comes down to the turnovers.
Yeah, sequencing. Like, say for example, you call a particular run out of a set, then you come back to that same set. If you, in like a similar situation, instead of calling that run, you call like a play action that mimics the run motion, the opponent's going to be thinking it's probably the run coming, and you basically just have to set it up. So, like, that's a big difference.
All right, Matt. What do you think? What's your
Yeah,
difference?
I think read progression in the passing game is the biggest one. You look at a play before, and then you say level sail, just because, let's give Colt a mention here, but that's a pretty popular play that's expanded well beyond just Colt. But like, that you look at a route and you just assume that, oh, that one's going to be open, and then you don't look at any other route. No matter what happens after the play, you just throw that. Those are the guys I like playing, because I know I can take that away and I beat you. But I think the overarching thing, because that's just in the passing game, is I think the bottom guys in the league, they don't have a plan. They go into the game, they're like, I know the 12, 15, 20 plays I'm going to run, and I'm just going to run them. And if I go down 7-0, oh, I've got to get it all back, and now I'm throwing all over the field. And then at the end of the game, they're like, oh shoot, I had to run, or I broke ratio because I was down. Well, you're only down 7-0 or 10-0. You didn't have to just start airing the ball out, which you're terrible at, and now you've thrown 8 picks, and now you're down 40-0, right? Whereas if you just would have stuck to the run game, maybe you'd have picked up some yards, or put yourself in a 3rd and 3 instead of a 3rd and 20. And then in those 3rd and 20s, are you running the ball and punting, or are you trying to force a pass and now you're throwing another pick? So I just don't think the bottom guys have a plan. And I think it shows, because when I play them, I'm like, this person doesn't have a plan. I just punched him in the mouth, and they don't have a response. The top guys, they never panic. Good play Prime. You can be up 14-0. He's gonna run the ball. He's gonna take his checkdowns. He's not gonna just start going for the big play. So I think that's it. These bottom guys, they don't have a plan when they start the game.
Yeah, I think another thing.
I remember when I played you this year.
I think another thing, talking about, like, you brought up level sail and Colt. That's all Colt has. He's gonna throw level sail out of that formation every time he's in that formation, and that's a dead giveaway. So, like you said, you can put your user right where they're gonna be. But with that. Yeah. That leaves our final score at ZBD with 70, Steve with 72, and Matt, our big winner, at 91. Matt, these 10 seconds are all yours.
Yeah, real quick, guys. Hey, we're heading into the playoffs. This is the most exciting time of the year. If you're not playing in the playoffs, it can still be an exciting time of the year. Get in the booth, volunteer for commentary. Those posts are going to come out. It's a lot of fun, but also it's pivotal to the league. It's what separates us, and it will be what separates you when it comes to the next team draft. I guarantee it.
Yep, or even
I'll be doing that.
Next call up.
I'll be doing that.
So thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for being on. Enjoy your Friday night and football weekend. Have a good weekend, guys.
Thanks for listening to First and Goal. Be sure to check out Mad Bomber TV on Twitch and YouTube for the latest from the SML. And we'll see you next time on First and Goal.